Hello, everybody, and we are back. And today I'm here with Andrew. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here and jump in the conversation.
Cool. So today we are going to talk about DeSci or decentralized science or whatever you want to call it. It's basically the area I bumped into probably 3 years ago. And because I used to work in pharma, I always liked the topic. I thought decentralized science probably not going to solve everything, but it might be a nice way to add some sort of transparency to the processes which we have, and maybe give more people chance to actually be part of it. Because right now it's a big boys club. So that's why we have Andrew here today. And I bumped into Andrew because he is a founder of DeSci Alliance. Am I saying it right?
That's correct.
Yeah, cool. So let's jump right into it. Andrew, how did you get to Web3? When did you get interested in this thing?
Yeah.
And how did you end up in DeSci?
Yeah, so kind of an interesting story. Part of the story begins with where I live, which is in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a very small state, but it's a very libertarian state. And so we have a good base of libertarians. Those happen to be my friends and comrades in
One
arms
of them.
here. And I was introduced to Bitcoin very, very early as part of a kind of a movement here and among libertarians. And so was introduced to it. I never fully grasped the currency piece of it, but I always immediately understood the blockchain's potential. And in fact, one of the first ways that I saw the disruptive power of the blockchain was in government, and did various interviews with basically just emailed or tried to get in contact with leaders in the blockchain space, including Andreas Antonopoulos, Roger Ver, others, and actually just spent time interviewing them before this podcast style of thing, just calling them and asking them and saying how do you think this is going to disrupt government? And so really understood really early on the potential for blockchain. Ultimately, after around COVID, I went to work for helped to lead their ecosystem team, went on to Avalanche and was part of their growth team, and then onto a number of other protocols and things like that. One of the last projects I was working on was working in the data privacy space, and specifically bringing private data on chain, retaining its programmability and composability, but bringing it in a way that would still protect its privacy. And that obviously overlaps in the DeSci space. So I started talking to a number of DeSci projects and just kind of got pilled, really. Just started to see the potential. And I think for me, I think I represent a lot of people who come from the crypto space and maybe are more largely like DeFi, in the sense that what I realized was that in DeFi or really crypto and the meme side of crypto, and they have to dream up use cases or they have to create, they have a product and they've got to go try and find some way to sell it. What I realized right away in DeSci was that you have real problems that affect real people in real life, and that the blockchain provides for them real solutions. And so there's all this demand. There's demand around new ways to fund science and new ways to capitalize projects. You have all this demand around breaking down the walls of the institutions and the good old boys club, and whether that's through the peer review system, whether that's through access to laboratories, right? In all these ways, blockchain it disrupts the middleman. And so in all these ways, I just saw that potential. And I'm just being totally honest with you, Pete. I literally just started tweeting about what I kind of thought about it. And yeah, I guess I just sort of hit a nerve. And, I'm not a scientist. I don't pretend to be a scientist. I literally come at this for just as my voice is just to amplify the space and to raise the work that's being done by so many amazing people.
So what is your background? Are you like a techie, or it's more like economy, finance, or sales?
No, none of that. I think my background is just is more of just building narratives around emerging tech. I've always sort of been early, and I've always been able to understand concepts and articulate them in a way that resonate with people. And I would say that's literally all that I've. I obviously have marketing and background. The way that I see my role in the DeSci space is just as the ecosystem guy. So I want to connect people. I want to amplify the space. I want to just see it grow. And I have no real economic interest in this. and passionate about seeing the space amplified and grown.
Nice. So, how did the DeSci Alliance happen, and how old is it? Because I basically came back to DeSci after New Year's, so it was like mid January when everything like skiing and holiday traditions were done.
Yeah,
And I think one of the first things I bumped into was first of all you and some hints on like a list of VCs who are gonna invest, and then DeSci Alliance.
yeah. So I started by um, well, I started posting about. I think one of the first things I posted about was like, here are some companies or here are some projects that are interesting. Who am I missing? And look, I from my experience, I know how to build an audience and build a community, and so I just sort of started doing, just sort of posting a little bit about that, and that's when I just like, oh, that's what sort of opened the door and started gaining some traction, and suddenly there was, you could tell like this was a big need in the space, like the ability to go to market, to be able to build a community is clearly a big need in the DeSci space, and there's a lot of interest in that. And
Yep.
so out of that, I just kind of said, well, you need a mechanism, like if you're going to start a community. So yeah, I mean, let me just explain it to you this way, especially if there's projects who are listening to you who are thinking about this very thing. Like one of the first things you have to do is you got to have like an aligned vision. And so for me, the aligned vision is, let's build DeSci. And you've heard me say already multiple times, amplify DeSci. And I'm just going to keep
Yep.
saying that because that's what I'm trying to do. That's not like a mistake. It's intentional, right? It's like it's on
Right.
purpose. We're going to build up the entire ecosystem.
Yep.
But if you're a
Makes sense.
project, you've got to figure out what is that aligned vision, like what is that mission that you're gonna articulate, that you're gonna say over and over and over and over again. Some projects that are successful have that. You can say they're successful because they're talking about this or this.
Right.
There are a lot of other projects that you could say, man, those guys are amazing, but I can't really tell you what they're doing, right? And
True.
that's the key. So you have an aligned vision. The second thing after the aligned vision is you have to have a place or a way to sort of catalyze that support. So the easiest thing for me was, because the traction that I was experiencing was coming to me through Twitter. I just kind of like went to their community function and just said, okay, let's do something there. Now they don't have a great community function, and it's sort of underused because of that. But it's a lot easier than saying, hey, go to Discord, or hey, go to
Mm.
Reddit, or hey, go to here, or go to Telegram, or go to this one, or go to that one.
Absolutely.
Especially because everybody in Web3 is like tired of doing that. Like no one wants to join another Telegram group. Nobody wants to join. So what I did was I just simply said, okay, let's just start an X community. It's a very low burden of effort to join. You literally just click join. But what that does is it tells Twitter that all of these people have opted into my content.
Hmm.
And so now I have something like 700 people all around DeSci who have
Okay.
all
Nice.
by a signal told Twitter's algorithm that they want my content. And that's a very strong signal for Twitter's algorithm. It's stronger than almost anything that you can find out there. And so what I was able to do was sort of like use that as a way to then start to post inside of that community and start to talk about raising the volume and amplifying DeSci. All of those
Hmm.
people have that shared vision. They all want to do the same thing. They all see that as a value. And so that's been my approach and reason why I started DeSci Alliance, and sort of the mechanism behind it.
So when did this happen? Was it like last year end or this
Yeah.
year?
Yeah, it was like, I think December timeline.
December time. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I
By
can't
the
remember
way, so
exactly.
to
Maybe it was like early December, I think. So it's very, very recent.
okay. So to ask about the Twitter community function, which I see it on a timeline. I'm a member of some communities, but I don't use it very often.
Yeah.
But I was always curious. Does it mean that because I'm member of the community which you started, for example, that I'm going to see all your posts, or I'm just going to see more of them than I usually would? Just more.
Yeah. Yeah. You see more
Okay.
from, I mean, because just think about it. Like from Twitter's perspective, when Pete says, I'm going to join the DeSci Alliance, you're literally opting into my content stream.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
but the little X factor here that no one has yet really fully realized is that anyone who posts inside of that community, which right now I have it set so that anybody can post, anyone
Mhm.
who posts inside of the community has access to all the people who have opted in too. So
Okay. That's
and
neat.
that's the value of being a part of the alliance, is When you come in, you have the ability. So like when you go to make a post now on Twitter, up at the top, it says post to everyone. You hit that drop down and you should see a list of the communities that you're in that allow you to post. You can post Alliance. And when you post it,
Right.
and then you post the DeSci Alliance, and what you're doing is you're telling Twitter, this is DeSci content that the people in the DeSci Alliance are going to be interested in. It goes into that feed. And what happens is that DeSci content gets set into their content timeline.
Nice. Just gonna try it straight away.
Yeah, yeah. So that's,
Okay,
you know,
that makes sense.
that's one of the mechanisms that I think is there. Otherwise, it's almost, I mean, they're from a functionality perspective, like it's very minimal. Like, I mean, there isn't really much functionality inside of Twitter for communities. Now, I think that they're going to be improving that because I even just noticed this last week they issued an update around the community functionality, changed some of the formats. You can now
Mhm.
add communities into your bios. So I think that they're going to start like doing this more and more. So it's a good time to start to use that. But anyways, that's
Cool.
where that came from, and that was my thinking behind why I did it.
I'm probably lucky in the sense that there is not too many DeSci communities just yet.
I think I can comment on that. I think
Yep.
that there are, without a doubt, there are some amazing people who have been here in this space and who feel and have not just that they feel, but they have been critical in building the space to what it is today. And
Sure.
sometimes when somebody like me shows up, who I'm just like just tweeting about stuff, but gets a little bit of like, you know, traction and stuff. Sometimes
Traction.
there's this feeling of like, oh man, you know, that they're stealing all the glory, and that's not my intent at all. Like, I mean, honestly, I didn't
Right.
set
Right.
out one day to say like I'm going to take over DeSci. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I've just what I want to do is I just want to elevate. I don't want to overtake. I'm just trying to elevate all the amazing science-based projects that have been in the space and that are coming into the space, and like the more that we can do that, the better. And it's going to take literally everybody's voice. One of the things that DeFi did really early was isolate. They infought and they isolated. You had all the
Mm.
fights around the chains, you had all the fights around the various projects, you have all these communities getting, right? And you had these turf wars all the time. What happened is it created this very antagonistic environment in which no one was winning because everyone was fighting everybody else. We, as a community of DeSci, will not exist. We cannot fight big pharma. We cannot fight institutions. We cannot win this battle that we've engaged in if we are going to be filled with infighting about who came first and who did this first and who did that first, right? And so, look, I'll be the first
Yep.
one to take a seat at the back of the bus. This is not about me. This is about like just moving everybody forward. And if I can say one thing to the DeSci community, it's like we all need to participate. Pete, the work that you're doing is important. The work that others are doing, it's important. It doesn't matter if you've just started. It doesn't matter if you've been in here for 5 years. What matters is that like everyone who will align around and carry the same flag and say, okay, let's all work for DeSci and the vision that DeSci promises. I think if we can align around that and if I can help be a voice in unifying people around that, then man, you know, I'm
You're
happy.
good. You're good. No, look, I agree. I think, it's sort of natural to feel a little bit of distrust in Web3 towards everybody who is here shorter time than you
Yeah,
because, you may be just passing through. Who knows?
yeah, yeah,
Also, it's kind of like schizophrenic many times because we all want like more people in. When they come, we are like, I think we haven't figured it out yet.
yeah,
But especially on side, I think the space is super vast and there's a lot of work to be done on build the credibility that,
yeah,
people here are not just drifters and that they're also like serious scientists,
yeah,
but also people who understand business because eventually, someone has to pay for it. And it's nice that we can raise a couple of million or tens of millions, but it really means very little in the pharma healthcare space. And so I think we will not really make it without onboarding the big guys eventually.
mhm,
And it's going to be a long, painful process, but we need unified culture and also at least a strong looking group
right,
that has to look strong from the outside.
right. I think that so if I could kind of riff on what you just said, I think what you said is very important and aligns with my perspective. I think one of the things that's missing right now in the DeSci conversation is projects have to begin to articulate message, really why they're choosing DeSci. I think even before they get to the messaging around, we're a DAO and we exist to cure this thing or that thing, right? Those are powerful statements. Or we've got some lab and we're going to do this or X or. I think they have to first articulate why DeSci and what is it that DeSci brings to their project that is of value. Because otherwise, there's this question which exists among scientists and pharma, everybody, which is like, why do you need a blockchain to do that? And that's this prevailing question. But it's a question of ignorance. It's spoken into silence because to date, DeSci has not done a good job of answering that question. And
Right.
it's a powerful question though because it undermines your existence. So if you say I'm going to choose DeSci and we're a DeSci project and we're going to do this, and you can't answer the question why the blockchain, then your project isn't a real project. It's not a legitimate project. You have to be able to say, we chose the blockchain and we chose DeSci because it adds this. It aligns with our mission to do this. It facilitates funding in these additional ways. Right? You have to be able to say, here's why. And I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it, if the only reason why you chose DeSci is to launch a token, you're not DeSci.
Right. But launching a token means funding.
Right. If you only exist to just launch a token, you're not DeSci. Because on the back of that, you're D, but you're not Sci. Because otherwise you could be anything you want to be. Like you could make it a decentralized bus company and launch a token, right?
I think there is one.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. but I think it's really important that to be DeSci, you're coming to it because you see the value that the technology adds and that it feeds in value into the proposition. And I think that is a very, very critical piece. The more projects who can articulate that help to differentiate themselves from the pump and dumps, help to differentiate themselves from crypto side, and help to establish themselves as legitimate players. And I think that there are a lot of legitimate cases to use the blockchain. There are a lot of legitimate cases for decentralization, for composability, for immutability, for verifiability. There's a lot of reasons to choose the blockchain as your technological base. And so, but I just think the DeSci projects today have got to do a better job of answering that question first, and then talk about their particular solution.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's in many ways similar everywhere in Web3 or even Web2. Young companies usually have a problem of describing neatly. It's like, what are you doing and why are you doing it this way, not the other way? Many times it's because they don't think it's important. Sometimes it's because they haven't spent time thinking about it, because the founder sort of intuitively feels this is like a good direction, which I want to try. Maybe, privacy and all the tooling which we have in crypto and immutability could play a bigger role. But in many ways, it will mean that a lot of ways how we do science today will have to change. One question which I had since we agreed that we are going to talk was, so everywhere when I see DeSci on a timeline, it always implicitly assumes we talk actually about healthcare and pharma. But, why is it DeSci and not like health sci or something? Because there are a lot of other areas of science, right? From physics to whatever you may have. So why? Or am I understanding it wrong? Because my feeling is it always ends up with like healthcare related stuff when we say DeSci.
So I can appreciate that. I think that there is a lot of health focused projects that align with that. I think this is because of the supplement space and sort of the unregulated nature of the supplement industry, especially in the United States, that you have real companies who are doing real science and real projects, but they kind of live outside of the FDA world or
Right.
Someone's probably going to correct me here for which agency is directly responsible for them. But but those projects have built communities. They're real companies with real revenue, and they have audiences that I think are a natural fit to bring this in.
Gotcha.
Think about the average science lab, like the lab who's running. They're run by an immunologist, and he's got a laboratory. And they're doing amazing work. What they don't have is a community. They never had to
Right.
go build any customer base, right? They deal with institutions. They're all B2B. Like they go to conferences, they meet
Yeah.
clients, they write papers, and that's how their business operates. When you talk about DeSci, suddenly it's an entirely new model of going direct and thinking about how you can build a community and raise awareness. That's a very different game. So I think what you're hearing is the first wave of the companies that exist to have the easiest and lowest barrier to market.
Okay.
Now, what I would say is there's a lot of other things from companies I've been speaking to. I mean, last week I think I spoke to over 20 companies. This week will be probably over 30. Like a lot of projects,
Impressive.
getting a real sense of what's happening. There's a very significant amount of interest coming from the established science space, especially as NIH funding has sort of been disrupted. That's caused a lot of people to start to consider what they're doing and how they're doing it. I also think there are a lot of other verticals that are becoming aware and are starting to move into this. Just last night, was contacted by a company who's doing stuff in space, right? And there's some science work that's being done around that. That falls under DeSci, right? At some level,
Hmm.
astronomy is a form
Yeah.
of science. So like you have all of these things. What about ecology? What about environment? Right? These companies exist. I don't think that they've all adopted the DeSci brand. I don't think that they've necessarily seen the benefit of it. And to your point, it's been a very small community for a very long time with really tight arms around it. And I think what we're starting to see now is that expand, and for the DeSci tone to change to say, hey, we want to help everybody, we want to elevate everybody. Let's all band together and do this. So I think we're going to need all the biologists, all the ecologists, all the immunologists, every vertical of science that you can think of that aligns around the values and principles of blockchain. We're going to need them on board. And we're going to need all of us to be elevating and amplifying ultimately the entire ecosystem.
I see. Okay. Yeah, fair explanation. So, from your perspective, what is the easiest low-hanging fruit we could tackle with from your perspective?
Lowest hanging fruit. The problem with asking me that question is, or asking anyone, is they're biased by their own knowledge, right? So this is where I look into that vast space of things that I don't know and wish that I could pull something out of that for you. But look, I think that the first and immediate low hanging fruit around DeSci revolves specifically around data services.
Mhm.
So there are primitives that exist today to allow you to facilitate data, whether it's private or public data, to use it on chain in both programmable and mutable ways, and that aligns really, really well with the blockchain and those sort of things. Scientists, the entire DeSci space revolves around data, whether it's research data, whether it's patient data, whether it's health, whatever it is. This space creates massive amounts of data. And so I think that there is some real opportunity there. So in my mind, if I was to pitch you a startup right now that I would love to do, and I'm sure there are people who are doing it, is I think that with some of the privacy primitives that exist today, you can tie into existing healthcare databases or large data sets, whether private or public, and they all retain their silos, yet they're connected. And
Right.
you can have AI run over the top of those consistently, and basically, maybe this is what Data Lake is kind of doing, but basically build this massive array of connected data sets that you don't own, but you get to rent, right? You get
Hmm.
access to. So the economics are, I'm not buying all your data. I'm simply generating an additional stream of revenue for you. So through API, you connect to all these data sets, and now the AI is just running over all the private data sets. You never give up your data. The AI never sees your data. It simply is able to compute on top of it, pull inferences off of it. use that, right, and compile it. So now what that means is, imagine if that's done at the pharma level. Now all of the data from Pfizer, all the data from Merck, and all the data from this little random laboratory over here and over here and over here could be connected in a singular way. Super easy. Infrastructure already exists. They can be all connected in a simple way. And now Pfizer can run queries, Merck can run queries, and now their data set is not their own, but now the shared human knowledge around pharma without ever sharing any company secret or private brand secret or anything like that. And it's only a value add, right? It's not a cost add. It's only a value add. So that's, to me, that's just something I thought about, and I'm sure it exists.
Sounds like a dream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying it because I used to work for Merck,
Oh, okay.
and
Well, you would know.
this is not happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be a dream. I
Yeah.
think it's partly understandable why it's not any company's dream, because the data is basically the fuel for everything you can do in the future. So even if eventually, and maybe we could do it through regulation, it can be like obligatory. Once you use your data for, I don't know, 10 years, you have to put it into a private public pool and everybody can query them. But everybody wants to keep their data and run the AI, hopefully better AI than the others, on their own
Yeah.
data to come up with like future IP,
Yeah.
which I guess is going to be the biggest stifler of data feeding growth
Yeah.
for
There's,
pharma
I,
in general.
I think there's a shift coming in the sense that you're not, remember when Google first started indexing websites, and like at
Yeah.
first everyone was like, take everything, like we got to secure the walls, like Google can't get into our place. And then all of a sudden it switched. And then you said, oh, let's hire people who help us better index our data to get it onto Google.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There was
Yeah,
a shift.
I do.
So I think that as these privacy primitives start to make their way into the market, what you're going to see is you're going to have the Merck and you're going to have the Pfizer and you're going to have these guys who are going to stand apart. And you're exactly right. They're going to be the institutions. And what they're going to do is they're going to work with legislators to try and pass legislation against this. They're not going to ever go for it, right?
Probably, yeah.
100%. But what you're going to have is you're going to have the startups who are going to start banding together. And what you're going to notice is that collectively, and with a privacy primitive that protects their data and retains their competitive advantage, but makes all of them more advantageous, like that's the thing. Like they're all going to be more efficient. That wave is going to have to grow against all odds and against all the forces of nature. It's going to have to grow. But what's going to end up happening is at some point, one of those guys is going to go, you know what? I can actually double the size of my data set that I'm running my AA on, or triple it or quadruple it. And I could have an advantage if I do this before Merck and before Pfizer do it. So I'm going to do it.
Yep. Yep.
And then all of a sudden you start to have this wave that you can't avoid.
If I would be placing my bet, I would actually bet on the other way around. So I would bet on the fact that some of the startups in the DeSci space will figure out the way how to actually create the datasets in silico without the need for datasets from the old pharma. So sort of like, NVIDIA is doing with the virtual worlds from coming to Cosmos now, that someone will figure this one out so that there will be a way to create the datasets to train the AI to do the things you would
Yeah.
normally do with the real life data.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me like more plausible than basically just breaking the multi-billion-dollar alliance of 50 pharma companies, right?
Yeah. Could
It's too
be.
much money hidden in there.
Right. And power and all that.
Yeah.
It's totally possible. Yeah.
So coming back to our DeSci Alliance, if I would like to get, let's say, better understanding of like what's been happening in DeSci before we got here, and who is like super exciting total newcomer into the space, which names would pop into your head so I could contact them and try to get them on the pod?
What names would come into my head? Well, there's a number of really great people. So the first one is my co-host on the spaces that we've been doing, and we have a space tomorrow with
Yeah.
AI. But Erin McGinnis from DeSci
Aaron, right? Yeah. Okay.
is amazing, and a DeSci. She's been around for quite a while. I'm not sure if she would consider herself an OG or not, but certainly somebody who's really influential and well connected, and just valuable in the space. So I think that she's somebody. The projects that she's aligned with, I think, have been a great help. Let me just say this though, like truthfully, the people who have come on this space, the people who have participated in this spaces, all the projects who are saying like, hey, I'm willing to come. I'm not saying this just for the sake of saying it. I truly mean it. Like that is what's made this fun and
By
successful
the
and
way,
helpful.
I have to give you a lot of credit. I was surprised to see so many projects come and actually in a relatively organized way say things which made sense, like what we are doing, what we are trying to do. Because a lot of times, well, I would say probably most of the times, honestly, in different areas of Web3, if you join any spaces which are supposed to like introduce some projects, you oftentimes learn really nothing. But this was really good. I've grown my DeSci list of accounts to follow, so it was definitely helpful. And
One of the things that we talked about after that spaces was like we heard from multiple people who said I found like 2 new lab partners through that space and was able to connect with them and started to do stuff. Oh, I connected with a VC because of they
awesome,
were in that space. All right, 3 people reached out to us and wanted to talk about partnerships. Like I think to your point, being able to just go through it and keep it to like a succinct time where we're just talking about what we're doing. It
yeah.
also I want to ask you, we talked a little bit about the memes and the blah blah blah, but like when you were on that space, I don't know how long you stayed for, but it's 3 hours or something like that. When you walked away from that, did you get the sense that the DeSci community was a bunch of pump and dumps, or did you get the sense these were actually serious people, like real scientists building real projects? Truthfully,
So I probably ended up somewhere in the middle. I
yeah,
definitely haven't thought this was like some yapping space where people were hyping their projects which have
yep,
no substance. I couldn't say whether, they were just like really excited builders without real credentials or they were actual scientists. I think it's one of the areas which we will have to fix, especially for DeSci, because if you will come to like, more of like funding issues and research being put forward for funding, you will want to know, I would want to know as a founder,
yep,
who am I giving money to? I mean, do they have a chance? Or is this just like they are really excited about the topic, but they've
yeah,
never researched anything?
yeah,
But
yeah,
so to your point, it was great. I definitely thought these people are serious about what they are saying they will do. I've, connected with Rosen from there. Saw a couple of projects which totally made sense. Saw some projects which are on scene for a long time. But, this distinction, whether they are serious scientists or,
I understand that.
just excited public, not really
Yeah,
possible to
yeah,
make.
yeah. I think when I come from the DeFi space, like you're saying, to have a space that was filled with people like that was like a very different experience than what I've had in other areas of Web3. And
Hmm.
so that's why I'm excited about who's building in DeSci and just the nature of the projects that are coming to market. And look, the people that I've talked to and networked with in DeSci are serious about science. Sometimes I'm hearing this sort of like chatter from the scientific community or academics who are saying like, well, if you even choose the label DeSci, you're not serious.
Right. Yeah. Well,
And I just want to say like they said the same thing about the internet. They said the same thing about every innovation ever. And in fact, the innovation that you're working on right now, some other scientist has said, if you work in this field, you're not a serious scientist. So
yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's just the criticism isn't enough to make it legitimate. Instead, I think that that's why I'm coming back to this point that it's so important for the space to continuously advocate why they're choosing DeSci. And if we can articulate that, if we can build that, I
Mhm.
think that creates a foundation for all of our projects to flourish.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add one thing. I believe DeSci would probably benefit a lot from some sort of like I don't want to say organized, but maybe decentralized, but like organized approach to like figuring out the right narrative
Mm-hmm.
which you want to pass on to outside space, honestly, and
Yeah.
also maybe sort of like figure out the priorities and steps for people who are new, which
Yeah.
they should like take. Where should you start? And really just also for ourselves, like what's the low hanging fruit, or what are the blockers which will really make the next steps really hard if we don't solve them now? Things like
Pete,
that, right?
Pete, let's do it. We need to collaborate on that. We need to figure
We
that
need,
out. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
seriously, that's what the alliance is all about. It's like saying, if that's where I totally agree with you. But if your mind is going in that direction, if you have a gift and thinking about it and seeing it from that perspective, then we need you to participate with us. So like, let's do it.
I'm here.
Okay, love it.
uh,
I love it.
cool. So, what is the question? Because we are running on 45 minutes and I know you have kids coming, a life to live, things like that. What is
Yes,
the question which I should have asked but didn't? What is the area which we didn't touch on, you wanted to talk about, you think it would be important to get out?
I think it would probably be like, where is this going? We talked about where it started.
Right.
We
Okay.
talked about kind of what we're doing. I don't know that we necessarily talked about where it's going.
No,
And
that was my last question.
okay,
But
perfect.
you are there. You are there.
I
Let's
beat you
talk
to it.
about it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't, I'm just being very frank about this, and I have been the whole time. Is just like, I don't know where it's going. I didn't start the alliance with some sort of like master plan to take over the world, and I don't think that that's going to change. I think it's doing the types of things that we are doing. So spaces on Wednesday, where we're focusing on specific verticals. So like we started one last week was like a general one. This week will be
Yep.
AI. Next week will be another vertical and another vertical, and just thinking about how to aggregate those spaces. But you'll notice the difference. The thing that we're doing is we're not starting spaces to talk about ourselves. We're starting spaces to let everyone else have a platform. That's the
Mm-hmm.
reason why we're gaining traction. So like if you're a project and you're in the longevity space or you're in the health space, or do a space and invite everyone on to talk about what they're doing. Like that's platform
Yeah.
people. Stop
No.
stop gatekeeping people, right? That to me is like the thing. So anyways, we're going to continue to do that. So Wednesday at noon and on Friday, I think at 10 or something like that, we'll be doing like, what did you do in DeSci this week? And those are just very simple community builders. I imagine that as we move forward, we'll continue to do more spaces where we introduce new things. Maybe we do like a pitch competition and we bring on some VCs and do something like
Yep.
that. Maybe we bring on
Pretty cool.
like scientists in a certain field and have people present projects and have some sort of like critical questioning, and just create more like
Yep.
community building, community activities. I think some of the things that you just mentioned are things that I also really want to participate in and would love to find people who also want to participate. Is like, how do we onboard? Like so I spent a big part of my week this week like diving into Reddit, and it's not because
Okay.
like Reddit's a dark hole with all sorts of stuff, but what I noticed about it, and I got sort of like dragged into it, was they are these massive communities, hundreds of thousands of people who are amateurs mostly, who are doing a lot of their own research. I mean, the biohacking communities, the peptide communities, like all of those communities are huge masses of people. Now, what's
Yep.
interesting is they all participate out of their own interest, but
Yep.
in DeSci, they could have an economic participation in the projects that they're writing about and researching about and talking about, right? Like right now,
Yep.
they're just doing it out of their own interest. I think that there's some amazing opportunities to align an economic interest to say, you're doing all this stuff over here. Let's do this together. Let's onboard the Reddit, and just think all the projects. I mean, if a project could onboard 300,000 people into their community, we would today say that, oh, they're the greatest project that's been started in DeSci, right?
Oh
It would be
yeah.
like insane. We would just all be going crazy. And literally, they're there. You have
Yep.
people who are every day spending their time writing about peptides, writing about molecules, right? I mean, they're on there, they're doing it, and they have this community going. So like to me, I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, how do we start to onboard those people into DeSci? How do we show them the value proposition? How do we start to connect those dots? That's the stuff that I want to do. Like I want to figure that out. I want to bring those people into the projects. They're gonna fill in like the projects that they're interested in, and they're gonna do great things. But like, how can I connect those two worlds? And that's what the DeSci Alliance is going to be working on.
Okay, that's great. I'm happy to hear that because I think we often forget in Web3 that our community is very very small, and most of the stuff is happening somewhere else. It would be really hard to find topic about which people are not already talking somewhere else. It's just
Right,
that maybe you don't know the place or you don't like the place. So a lot of people don't like Reddit, like a lot of people
right,
don't like Twitter, right? So it's the same thing.
right.
But yeah,
Cool.
totally agree.
I really
And I
appreciate
think
it.
the Friday and Wednesday so far turned out very, very good. So I'll be tuning in.
Awesome. Awesome. Pete, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do this and listening to me for
Well,
this long. Appreciate it very
thank you.
much.
Thank you so much for making the time. It was great. I learned a ton and we'll see where we can move it.
Absolutely.
Everybody, have a great day.
Thank you so much.